Okay. Good morning, everyone. These are the two of us. So my name is Martin Cherney. Good morning to you. I believe you have 10 a.m., so it's still morning-ish. We are in Prague, and I have 9 now, so it's morning for me. I am from Cogniware, and I am responsible for business development in the company. And that's why Alexander asked me because we have or we work a lot with Vex and have our own extensions for Vex. So he asked me if he could join you. So thank you, Alexander, for inviting us. And I would also like to introduce, or he will introduce himself, a colleague of mine who is joining me because he's, I would say, even though he insisted to have a business behind his name, he's, I would say, more technical than I am in regard to tools we have. So I have him with me. Thomas, can you say hi? Thomas?
Yeah, hi everybody. It's Thomas from Cogniware.
So yeah, perfect. And yes, so I would, if that's fine with you, I would just shortly describe what I want to talk about. There's not that many of you, so we can do this, I think, flexibly. But I will talk a bit about the company itself. I will talk about what we do, so you're not lost in why are we discussing this and that. Typing very loudly. Perfect. And then we can discuss a bit about a way how we work on a, I would say, partners with partners base. So in many countries, we work with local business partners, which may be interesting for you too, meaning that we find common ground together and we go into business together. I did put in some references and use cases we can talk about, at least on some, I would say, high level. And definitely questions. You can ask during the presentation, you can ask at the end, you can ask later, because I will, of course, give you my contact so you can ask later. I will try to answer questions right away. If there will be some bigger one or more technical one, I will take it outside and respond individually, but not to stop it too much, because I know we have you have your agenda packed, so we will have to fit in the hour. So if I may start first about the company itself. So the idea was to put together an extraordinary team of people, and this would be technical people. So that's where the company stands on, is the engineering team we have, which is very experienced in big data, which would in IBM correspond to IBM Big Insights before. Now, the second, I would say, should have been first maybe, is NLP, or natural language processing, which again in IBM translates into IBM Watson Explorer. And this would be one of two main areas we focus on. So IBM Watson Explorer, projects on IBM Watson Explorer, one of the main parts or one of the main focuses of ourselves. The next one is, I don't know how much are you familiar with IBM i2 product line, which is also an acquisition of IBM, but it concerns public safety. So these are almost a standard in public safety projects, IBM i2 Analyst Notebook or IBM EIA platform. This is the second focus point that our company focuses on. We do work with IBM cognitive solutions, everything in Watson ecosystem. We do have at least some experience with it. All the Blooming services and so on, we either tested them or we used them in pilot projects. So we can discuss them definitely. And this is something that the company grew up on. I don't know how many of you are familiar with IBM ECM portfolio, enterprise content management. That's where many of our engineers started their senior technical career 15 or 20 years ago with IBM ECM. Now, this is some of the people of the team. I only could put it in so many to fit on online. The company itself is privately owned. We have two owners, two founders, and around between 20 and 25 people in the team. And these are mostly technical engineers. We are an IBM business partner. We are among preferred for Watson Explorer in Europe. And I would say if you want to know one thing about the company or one thing what we do, it's a combination of unstructured and structured analysis, or unstructured and structured world, or unstructured and structured data. So most of the projects we work on, either services projects or also where we use our tools and assets, it's a combination of these two. So when you need unstructured content from text or from voice or from pictures, any type of unstructured source, get into structured or use for structured analysis. Like, for example, I2. This is a typical structured data software, but we combine these two together. So getting unstructured data into structured type of analysis. And for this reason, we also build and are building our own tools and solutions to be able to do these things. So it's in essence about the company itself. So who we are and what we do. We are based in Prague, in Czech Republic, but we have the team is scattered a bit because they come from Slovakia, and they are also many of them on project right now around the world. So that's the company. And the next part, which I will jump to right ahead, is about what we do. So I call this product lines, meaning what do we sell? So what does the business stand on? And so the first one is services. So that's where the company started on. We are part of projects in I would say more than 14 countries very well. We work a lot in Middle East. We work in Germany, in Austria, in Switzerland. And usually our role is in consultancy, in knowledge transfer, in architecture design. So how this works is that in many cases, we have local business partners, like maybe yourself, who work on projects and need extremely senior people on the project. So they ask us to provide 1 or 2 men for their team to help with the consultancy, to help with the architecture, or to make sure that, for example, Watson Explorer or IBM I2, which are both very sensitive to how they are implemented, to be able to deliver what they promise as a software, they use our engineers on the project. So that's the first part of the business. That's what the business started on. And from that, it moved to another part, which is our own product line, our own software, or our own software assets that in some way enhance or integrate IBM software. Meaning that on those projects, we found that for certain use cases or for certain problems, it's essential, it's needed to have some additional capability to what the IBM software does. And for that reason, we started our own separate brand or separate part of the business, which is purely this software assets. And it's right now it's a standalone part of the business. It has its own roadmap and so its own support. And both of these we do primarily with other partners. So they either use our services, or on their projects they use the assets that we develop for our projects, because it helps them to either make the projects faster or make them or offer new use cases, or be able to combine, for example, also an Explorer, which is what you are now on the enablement for with other softwares. And the last part, which is I would very shortly talk about that, as I would say strategic initiative to have end-to-end solutions which would combine these two. Like for example, for the GDPR initiative, GDPR regulation, which would be I would say bundle, which would solve an individual specific business problem. But I will now today focus mostly on the first two. I will talk about the individual assets we have, having in mind that it might help you when thinking about possible use cases for VEX, or what can VEX, what's an Explorer, be interconnected with, or how to maybe have it more or easily offered. And I'll talk about the service also a bit, because I have some references, some projects that we worked on, we can discuss and show how we use VEX. Alexander, is this up to now okay? Is going in the right direction for you?
Yes. Are there any questions here? No, doesn't sound like any questions. You can explain things.
Perfect. I think there will be much more questions right ahead, because this is just a overview. But I think it's good for you to know where we come from and why we are here first, rather than just jump into what we can show you. So now, I will jump into the individual assets we have about briefly, and then I will show you how one of them works, which is the one that I think might be most interesting for you right now. So how this split screen works is that at the top right, you will see a small architecture growing up, combining our assets and IBM software. And at the bottom right, you can see and I don't know how big a screen you have, but you should be able to see screenshots from the actual software. And don't worry, I will of course share the presentation with you, but just how is it put together. So the first asset, which we call Cogniware Data Collector, is used as a input collector for Watson Explorer. So this is a tool which stands before Watson Explorer and lets you connect to a number of sources to crawl data from them and prepare and move them or store them in IBM Watson Explorer. So if you need to analyze data from websites, from Facebook, from Instagram, from Twitter, from emails, YouTube, or other internal sources, from the source you name, you can use Cogniware Data Collector, which is a framework for crawlers that some of them being ready-made or ready to be shipped or ready to be used right from outside of the box. That will be those which are on the left list, all those I mentioned, and it's also the framework is also ready to be used by you or by ourselves to implement new, I would say, connectors to different sources. Meaning, usually the company that the client wants to use their own data from their internal systems, and you can easily create a connector just for them to be able to crawl their data sources. And all this is directly funneled into IBM Watson Explorer, which means that when you are on a project and you need to start fast on a POC, or the time of the whole implementation is important. It's a great tool to hugely improve the time which is needed to have this first part of the whole project behind you. That it's an alternative to IBM Watson Explorer standard crawlers, which could be, or you can implement those each time on each project. However, when the time is important, or when you don't want to spend too much effort or too much engineering time on developing crawlers in IBM Watson Explorer, you can very fast and easily deploy this data collector framework, which will enable you to connect to all these sources right away and to other in a shorter or easier way, and will allow you to scale. So you can start these data collectors, which are running on an application server in a way that will allow you to scan or to crawl multiple sources from many web pages, from many Facebook sites at once. And it has some. Sorry,
Martin, can I ask you? So I understand. Watson Explorer already provides pretty flexible crawlers which crawl many sources. So I understand your crawlers are able to crawl Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but for example, websites that web crawler can do, right? What is the advantage to use your data collector versus out of the box?
So for many of these sources, for example, for Facebook, you would need to actually develop a crawler for Watson Explorer. You don't come straight out of the box. And the implementation time and the complexity of implementing IBM Watson Explorer crawler is much higher. So you would the framework in IBM Watson Explorer is definitely an option. You can these are alternatives. So you can do either, or you can do both. But for example, for Facebook, namely, you would need to develop yourself a crawler for yourself. The one we have is ready-made, and also there is a difference which we could need to go deeper in technical details. But the implementation is different for the implementing crawler or developing crawler in data collector and developing crawler in IBM Watson Explorer.
Okay, but in order to get data from social networks, should we pay for some API connection, or will you tell us about it?
So all those ready-made crawlers that are there, so for Facebook, Twitter, and so on, these use the Twitter or Facebook API. So you don't have to I would say, take care of the current API yourself. That's what we do. You just configure the crawler in a easy UI, web-based UI, like the one you see at the bottom, and it just works. So it just connects to the Facebook page of your choice. That's true, you need to have an API key which will enable the crawler to crawl through Facebook or Twitter and so on. But that's it. If you would start with the Watson Explorer framework, you would need to start looking at the current API of Facebook, then developing or implementing the code to actually crawl it, and it's possible to do it. No problem with that. The difference is the simplicity and the time. I would say support, meaning that if you have a project and you have to implement it and you have to support it, it's a question of how much do you want to support fully by yourself, and for which part do you want somebody else who is, I would say, focusing on that problem to do for you.
Yeah, Martin, if I may, it's Thomas from Cogniware.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and guys, regarding the web page crawler you mentioned in Watson, the web page crawler in Watson will give you all the data from the web page, including banners, including menus, including all the rubbish data that you cannot process in Watson, including images, videos, audio files, whatever you or the author put on the web page. And since Watson is counting the RVU based on the content that is processed as an input, you will process a lot of rubbish data, or you will eat a huge part of RVU for rubbish data that will be thrown away. Our universal web crawler works as a crawler that has some configuration based on the structure of the web page, and based on this assumption, you can get only the clean data like date, author, the content of the web page, title, whatever, and you won't eat as much data from the RVU, like if you are using the out of the box Watson web crawler. So this is maybe the biggest advantage of our web crawler, that it saves the RVU and it gives you clean data, so you are not processing the rubbish data.
Sure.
But what about metadata? Like if I need some metadata from a web page?
Ну, они сначала должны дать нам исцельник, да, мы загрузим.
That configurable?
Yeah, we are using some technology called XPath. So I think all this information are directly accessible using the XPath notation.
Ну да.
That's additional question. So since we are providing the workshop for the service partners, commonly work with the and probably some of the local social media resources.
При загрузке мы все равно загрузим, да.
The integration.
Это при загрузке не будет играть роли. Можно
local social media. Or
yeah,
how
we have also connector for Contact.
So Contact is supported there.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Thomas, thank you. And more questions to data. More questions to data collector, or should we move forward, Alexander?
We should keep going.
Perfect. Okay. So let me go one more step ahead. Cogniware Advanced Alerting is another enhancement for IBM Watson Explorer, and this one enables you to implement or use Watson Explorer for a new use case, which is not possible without the enhancement. So what it does, it lets a user, not an administrator, but a user, an end user, to create own alerts based on search queries created in Watson Explorer. So a typical use case would be if you want your users to be able to get alerts on new documents which appear in Watson Explorer, they could use this enhancement to do that. You can imagine a project where some agency would want to scan or source or all online media or all online articles from, for example, from BBC or from CNN, and they would want only to be alerted on topics that they cover. So you would have an individual person that covers, for example, Syria, and how the system can work is that it would collect material from many sources. It could use data collector at first. These would be channeled into Watson Explorer, and if Watson Explorer would find a document, in this case an article, which contains mentions of or it leads to the said topic, for example Syria, then it would trigger an alert in this tool, which would send an email to that individual person with the link to that document, meaning that that individual person wouldn't need to go search for those articles either in the system or online. He would be getting those individual alerts on that individual news articles each or at that's at the same time they appear. So it's a typical use case how you would want to use Watson Explorer. However, without this enhancement, an administrator would need to do or create these alerts, which is we found that on some projects that it's a typical question from the client that they want the end users to create these alerts or these queries because they want to change them over time quite flexibly or easily, meaning that the guy wants to decide, okay, now I'm covering this topic, I want to be informed right away. I don't want to wait for an administrator to have some time to start my alert. And yes, so it's a very focused asset, I would say. It does this one thing, it does it very well. It enables you to at the client side to offer a typical use case they might ask for without hesitation. So you just say, yes, we do this, no problem. Just tell us that you need it. And it's it's a typical use case, quite common and quite easy to do when you have this asset in Watson Explorer.
How is it built? Is this part of App Builder or is it separate components? What is it?
Yeah, Tomas?
Yep. This advanced alerting is a plugin for the content miner. So it's not part of the Vivissimo or foundational component. It's part of the Watson Content Analytics, the analytical component, and it's a separate plugin for the content miner UI.
So basically, it works with analytical index, not with foundational index, right?
Yes, exactly.
And the data collector, that one is working with foundational index, is it?
No, it's also right now it's also for analytical components, but the beauty of data collector it's in its architecture or modules. So what you can do quite easily is to create a separate. It's called data handler. So it's an export plugin that will handle the storing of the data to foundational components. So it's possible to be done. I don't know, maybe in 3 or 4 or 5 days of work, and you can leverage all the functionalities of data collector and store the data directly in foundational components.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. More questions to this one, or should we move forward?
No questions.
Perfect. So now we are coming into the integration part, and this one is actually the one that I will later show. So on a number of projects where we came across, we actually integrate these two different IBM softwares. So IBM Watson Explorer on one hand, and IBM i2 on the other. There are a number of reasons, a number of cases where this makes sense to help, either because it's a typical use case they want in the first place, or when you need to show to the client different ways how to leverage Watson Explorer, or how to leverage the analysis that is done there. For example, from the standpoint of licensing, it's a relatively cheap and easy way of or possibility for a client who decides to invest into IBM Watson Explorer to buy licenses for a software called IBM i2 Analyst Notebook. I don't know how much are you familiar with it, but it's a tool for graphical or graph-based analysis of entities and relationships. This is typically used by, for example, by government organizations or police departments or also by banks or insurance companies to understand relationships, to understand the relationship is a great example in data. But this tool only works with structured data. It needs to be structured. But when you invest in Watson Explorer and you have Watson Explorer, you can use its annotators to get the structured data hidden in the unstructured text. So you can extract people, places, phone calls, cars or license plates, all hidden in text documents. Or also you could extract diseases or which would be hidden in some patient reports, or you can extract information from bank accounts or from bank documents or from legal documents. There's a number of them which you can extract with Watson Explorer. However, there are not that many ways how to graphically show this information in Watson Explorer. When you only have Watson Explorer, you're stuck with the user interface it has. However, IBM i2 is specifically designed to show these relationships and to show how this data works to a person who doesn't necessarily is a data scientist, but to somebody who needs to understand it for their line of business or line of work. And because all of these projects or these opportunities, or because we also wanted to be able to show this different view on their data to Watson Explorer clients or potential clients, we created an integration that lets you use this analyst notebook, this graphical analysis software to connect into IBM Watson Explorer and work with the documents and entities, analyze from them through this particular interface, through this IBM i2 Analyst Notebook. So you can hear it's just a small picture on the bottom, but I will show it, how it works in Move, so you'll understand it better. But the asset we have, the bridge, is integration between IBM Watson Explorer and IBM i2 Analyst Notebook, which lets you work from Analyst Notebook with documents stored in Watson Explorer, which have been analyzed previously, and extract and import these entities and relationships from those documents into a graph like you see down there. A graph that shows a person, his relationship to his phone, his car. It shows that that he was mentioned in a report, which was connected to robbery at some certain place, and all this you see in a nice graphical format, which you can play with, which you can enhance with more data, and so on. So I understand the topic for your 4 days is Watson Explorer, but I wanted to show you this, which is a possibility to integrate and offer or show to clients that there is more that they can do once they invest into Watson Explorer to be able to analyze the data. That there is many more things that they can actually do once they have this. So it's I would say a good point in showing to the client that they don't end up with Watson Explorer only with the content miner, for example, as a UI for data scientists, but they can also invest or go a step more and have different softwares like i2. It's not the only one. There might be integrations with different softwares, but they need to first have the text analyzed by Watson Explorer. So it's a combination of technical, I would say, resource, and also a business perspective that you can explain the investment in Watson Explorer, which is usually quite large, better when you can show other use cases for the data for the client than just, for example, one, which would be a main one. So so this is the first integration that I want to talk about, and I will show this one in a video demo to show you how it actually works. So how it, on some use cases, how it looks like and how it feels for the user to work with that. Alexander?
Yes. So, any questions? We are looking forward into your presentation of this on bigger, bigger
yeah.
picture. It's quite small.
Understood. So just before we jump into that, one more integration. There are two main ways how to use IBM i2. So you either only use IBM i2 Analyst Notebook, which is a local software for which runs on your machine, and you use the integration that I mentioned before. There is also an option if you are a large organization that you decide to invest in a bigger IBM i2 platform. This is called IBM Enterprise Insight Analysis, and it's a big, I would say, bulk or combination or a group of softwares which work together as I would say IBM i2 server version. So you have different UIs like Intelligence Portal here. You have different options for analysis. If you're not familiar with i2, think of this as a huge, or I would say much bigger version of the previous option. So you can do different analysis, more analysis, but you also have to pay much more for licenses, and you have to invest also heavily in the implementation. So we did a couple of implementation of this big platform, but it takes a lot of time and effort. So it's a much bigger thing for bigger projects, and we created our own integration for this one too. So there's a bit of a different architecture of the two options, so the integrations need to be different also. The main and the only difference I will tell you is that in the first one, you need to use our plugin interface. In this other one, you don't. So when you invest in the IBM EIA and then want to integrate it with Process Explorer, there will be no difference for users whether they use the data which is coming through the integration or they are using data from different databases. So I would, at least from my point of view, the main difference in using these integrations. But the goal is the same, to be able to analyze unstructured data in this IBM EIA. And the use cases for the EIA are also common to those for only IBM Analyst Notebook. But it's a bigger thing, more complicated thing, and it has a different type of integration than the first one. Is that somehow clear? I mean, it's maybe hard sometimes when you're not familiar with IBM i2 role, but in essence, this is it. So it's a much more complicated, much more, I would say, sophisticated as well version with a different type of integration, which lets users won't see it. So in this case, user doesn't know there is any integration. In the first one, he does. He needs to use the plugin which was shown on the right side. I will show it live also. Okay. Alexander?
I'm asking if there are any questions.
Okay.
Everybody looks to be lost a little bit. So.
Okay, so do you want, I can go through it more slowly again if you want to be sure to understand the difference.
Okay.
So there are two IBM i2 versions or types of software. The first one is Analyst Notebook. It's a local software which runs on your laptop for standard graph analysis. That was the one I showed you before. This one. And for this one, there's this particular integration which works as a plugin. You can see it on the right side. It has a small logo of Cogniware on top, which lets you analyze data documents from Watson Explorer in Analyst Notebook. Now, this is the first integration, and I will show this in a minute live on the video. And then there's the option, when you invest in IBM i2, to buy a big bundle, which is called IBM Enterprise Insight Analysis. You see it on the top right, that this is a much bigger box, which also includes in it analyst notebook, but there's much more stuff. And when you have this big box, IBM EIA, there's a different way of integration. So there's another bridge which connects these two. So when you have this big box, Enterprise Insight Analysis, you buy or you can use from us a different integration than the previous one. The main difference between the two integrations is that in the first one, you use a specific plugin in Analyst Notebook that we developed for working with the data. In this bigger one, there is a seamless integration. So you don't use any plugin, you work with the data the same way you will work with any other data. So the users don't see the integration, they will not see any trace of it. But in the first, but in this first one, they do. They have this plugin interface on the right side. In this one, they don't. They don't see any plugin, nothing. But the client would have to buy the whole EIA, which is a much bigger thing, much more expensive thing from IBM, and it's much more complicated to actually install, implement, and work with. So it's a server version. The first one, this one is only a laptop, or you can run it on any type of machine, but it's a local software. This one is a server version, much bigger, but with many more components. And for that reason, there is a different way of integrating the integration between Watson Explorer and EIA.
So Martin, I think maybe not everyone is familiar with this product. So what are the benefits of these products? Are they provide more analytical functionality on data in addition to what the standard analytical component provides? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. So the best way you can see it on a picture is here at the bottom right. The thing I2 is used for is analyzing in a graph format relationships and entities. So you can see it on the picture. It's used for visualizing entities like people and places and cars and phones and the relationships between them. So who met whom, or who talked to whom, or who used this phone, or how many people were on this place, or questions like this. And how did this change over time? So who were the people at this area over time, for example, or who went from this area to a different area? And you can use this, or you look at this in a graphical way. So you see this small icons and connection between these. So it's a different type of analysis that you do in Watson Explorer. But the reason I'm showing it is that when you already have Watson Explorer and you do analysis on those documents, you can show the entities and relationships hidden in those documents in this way. So it's a different way how to use and how to look at data which was analyzed by Watson Explorer.
Yeah, Martin, if I may.
Sure.
Guys, the biggest difference between EIA or I2 and Watson is that Watson is working or processing unstructured content, and EIA is working with structured content. So this is the biggest difference, and it's the difference that leads to a different approach how to work with the data. In Watson, you are trying to find the most important or the important information in the vast amount of data, documents, tweets, whatever you say. But in EIA, you have a lot of information that is already structured, and you are working with a different types of approaches, different types of analysis. For example, in Watson, you want to find all the persons that are called Thomas and are living somewhere, and you are processing a lot of documents. In EIA, you want to find all the persons called Thomas living somewhere that that have blue car, and they I don't know, they traveled to, for example Greece. So this is something you can achieve using EIA. So it's a combination of various structured data sources to be able to work with this data source as one. So what is the great value of Watson here? And that's why we also started in 2015 with EIA and I2, is that all our customers in some time will start thinking like, yeah, okay, I have structured content extracted from my unstructured content. It's great, but I need to combine it with all my data sources, databases, whatever, and I want to do enhanced analysis. So that's why Martin is presenting this, because for sure, I think for sure, all of you will get to this point of thinking of your customers that, okay, all our unstructured content is processed. We have all this information in a structured way, and we want to combine it with all our databases for, I don't know, about customers, about whatever, and to have this possibility to work with it in a different way like before. So that's why the combination of Watson, the unstructured world, and EIA, the structured world, can lead to new business opportunities and new use cases for your customers. So yeah, that's I think all I wanted to add to Martin's speech so far. Okay.
And this more powerful tool, it has to be installed, right? It's not like browser-based something. So is that correct?
Yeah. The Analyst Notebook is a thick client. It has to be installed on the client's machine, and it gives you a lot of possibilities to work with the data. They have also some, or EIA has also some portal that can show you some data, but at the end you will every time you will end in Analyst Notebook to work with the data, because you can work with different types of approaches like social network analysis, like proximity search, like I don't know, shortest route, and so on and so on.
Okay, is it not a bit clearer now, Alexander?
Yeah. Есть вопросы какие-то?
I have a question about one connector.
Может быть, погромче. Do you hear what Daria is talking?
I heard she has a question.
Okay. I have a question about the first one connector. Where is data from social media and from any other external sources are storing? I see the first.
So in this case, in this first integration, the data is stored in IBM Watson Explorer. So it stays in the collection of Watson Explorer.
You're speaking about the first one, right? I'm speaking about Cogniware.
It stays in IBM Watson Explorer. So data stays in IBM Watson Explorer. Hello?
How it gets to Watson Explorer? For example, I'm only working with your tool and with social media. After that, as I understand, it should be storing some file system or something like this. And after that, I should take it from file system and get it to Watson Explorer index, right? Or
they have connector directly to AC.
Yeah, the data handler I spoke before. The data handler is using Watson REST APIs to insert the crawl data from Facebook and whatever data source directly into Watson for processing. So, like you are using file system crawler, it crawls the data and stores or puts it directly in the pipeline, processing pipeline. We are doing this using REST APIs. So data collector collects the data, and using the data handler, it stores or it puts the data directly into Watson Explorer, into the processing pipeline.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
So, Martin, we are a bit over. How long do you think you'll need more before we can get it?
Yes, I know. Well, if you want, I can now quickly jump into the video so you see this live, so you have
Okay.
better understanding, and then we can the rest make very fast, and then we can end in 10 minutes, I think. Is it okay?
Okay. Yeah, we are fine. Thank you.
Okay, let me jump right here, and you should now see widescreen.
Yeah.
Sorry, now widescreen. Okay, perfect. There's no sound. I will be the sound. So it was done. Actually, this one is done in cooperation with iLab. I know you have guys from iLab coming, so we work with them a lot on some projects also. And this will show the first integration. So the integration between IBM Watson Explorer and IBM Analyst Notebook, I2 Analyst Notebook. And there will be 3 use cases on which we will show the various features. The first one is you want to find somebody in your company who is a agent or is doing fraudulent behavior. So now on the right side, that's the plugin. So yeah, right now, or the person is logging into the plugin. Now I'll stop it again. And now this is the interface that he will work with. So he has the option to connect to collections in IBM Watson Explorer. Right now it's collection called Intelligent Demo. And he can create a query to search for documents. What he will do right now, he will actually list all documents. So he will fill in a blank query. You'll see right away. We'll only change the collection. So there are 2 collections in Watson Explorer. He choose the second one, and he will just browse. And now he has a list of all documents which were in that collection. So he has now J, I, H.txt, G.txt. You see those documents. Now what he's trying to do, he is drilling down on those documents. So he knows he only wants documents which contain certain information, because he knows he's looking for an insider. He's looking for a clerk in the company who is doing something wrong. So he's now refining documents. He's looking for a clerk, a profession. So now he has a profession, which is information which is in those documents, and he chose those documents that has a clerk in them as a profession. So now he's only 2 results, and he can further refine them to find those documents which contain robbery, because he's looking for or he's investigating a robbery. So you write down robbery, and now he has only 1 document, a document which inside has information about a robbery and about a clerk. And what is happening right now is that that the person chose to import all entities which are possible to import from this document into the chart. So on the left side, in the big pane, now you will see the entities extracted from those documents, from that 1 document actually. And here you have it. So on back end, there is Watson Explorer running, which had documents inside, and it had 1 particular document called j.txt. And in this document, there was information about Steven Schneider, who has a Ford Focus, and who was at this place, who is a clerk, using this phone number, which he's calling, and also there was a robbery happening. Okay, and that's the use case. So now the investigation could follow up with that this particular person could be a suspect, and that the detective or the responsible person in the company should make more steps on understanding his behavior, his actions, and so on, using I2 or using a different software. But the use case here shown was looking for that particular person, and here we have him. That was Steven. So that was the first use case. Now we have a second one where we are looking for partners, pals who were in a crime together. So we will use. I'll let this here for a minute. Okay. So we are now. You analyze multiple documents and look for who are in those documents. Again, we did. You'll select all, you'll select all entities. So you can decide that you want a smaller graph, so you don't want everything, but we do. So you'll say you want everything here. Perfect. And we want it now on the chart. You see the chart on the left. You use this different view to have it. Yeah, it's better. And you can use I2 for different, actually for many types of graph analysis. We can't go right now through all of them, but for example, we can show how to here how to use bar charts and histograms. We will look for males. So from previous actions, the guy who's using the software knows that he is looking for two men who are connected. So he can use histograms here to choose only male persons. And now you can see it in the graph that it showed all the entities which are male. And now, in a quick zoom in, you can see these two persons, George and Timothy, which are connected through these documents on a place, on a car, and so on. Okay, you can also unuse the histograms. I know you can go deeper and show actually the documents itself. So on the right side now in the plugin, you see that individual document which is shown on the graph, and you can, without going outside of this user interface, you can read through the document and check actually where does it say that there is George Big J Gregory in the document, and what was the context of this information. So for example, now you can choose the entities which were extracted, which you see on the left. And now, I'll jump back a bit. Just, yeah. You see it actually highlighted in the document that there is George and his nickname Big J and so on. So in this way, you can interact with those documents right in this user interface in I2, and the use case is finished by this. So again, there will be next steps with this information, but the goal was to show you that you can use the plugin to get in the documents to look at the graph, to find something interesting about the graph using other tools in I2, and then to go back to the document and read the context of that one particular because otherwise you would need to read all of them, all those documents which has been imported, and look for the people and look for the places and understand which one actually is the important one. But this way it's much faster. You now know that the F document is the right one. You can imagine doing this with 10 documents or maybe 100, but when you have 1,000 documents, it will be very long and tough to do it one by one or by hand or by head. And this is the last one. In this particular one, we are looking for terrorist organizations, actually. And we want to understand who works in the organization. And we will show one particular feature only. So we start by query, again, using the same plugin. At this case, we don't want all documents. We just want those which actually have particular ISIS in them. Now, there's one document. You select it, you select the entities, all in this case, and you add it to the chart. Now, this is the information hidden in that one document. It has person, it has another person, it has some gun, it has a place. Now, what we will do is that it can happen that the person using this analyst notebook has his own document on his hard drive that he wants to also analyze. So he wants to do on-demand analysis of a new document. And this is what the plugin also allows you to do. So the user will drag and drop a file into the plugin, have it analyzed on the fly, and have the information extracted from the document also on the same chart. I will add comments. Here is the document. I'm going back to the I2 analyst notebook. I'm putting it in. I press analyze. There is a short pause before I press it actually. But when I actually press it, it's sent to Watson Explorer. It's analyzed. It's sent back. And now when I rearrange the graph, I can see that there is the b.text is a second document, and I see the connections. So I see there is Luis Fernandez, who is in both documents. I can see this place mentioned in both, and the bus. Okay. And also Charlotte, who was in the bus. So this is the feature that's shown here is the on-demand analysis. So it's flexible for users who want at some point to actually analyze not only data already in the collection, but data from the hard drive. So and at the very end, again, you can show the content and the context of the individual document. And we were showing that those guys met and so on. Okay, so that was it. So it was some of the use cases, or all of them are simple, and also documents are simple. It's because you want to show the idea more than to show a particular project, which we actually couldn't do at any time. But I believe it's good for demonstration.
So Martin, these objects which you shown, like bus and person name and phone number, are these like entities which are extracted from AC collection using the standard annotators, or is it something different?
Yes. So all of them are extracted using annotators in IBM Watson Explorer, which are standard. You have to create them. So the analysts have to create annotators which extract either people or which extract phones. This is simpler, or which extract also the relationships. So everything that was shown on that graph, on that video, was extracted through this process. So it was extracted in Watson Explorer via Watson Explorer annotators.
Okay, thank you.
So regarding time, let me jump ahead. This is just the list of the tools. I want just to, because I know about time, so I will just show quickly some of the projects that we worked on. These are in Switzerland, in France, in Germany. I can talk about just one particular because of the time, which is GID in Jordan, which is actually a intelligence agency there. I can't go in detail what they do, but they are typical type of potential user or potential client who would want to work with unstructured data from different types of sources, from internal reports and so on, and who then would leverage i2 as a great tool to do those types of analysis that I showed in the video. And for that reason, they also need the integration which lets them do that. There are many more use cases, and all these that I have here use Watson Explorer to some extent or for some use case. Not all of them in integration with IBM i2, GID do. The others, not all of them. Some only use Watson Explorer, for example, like Amadeus or Total. But there are many use cases that Watson Explorer can be used in. And yes, I will again open this quickly because we, at most of our projects, we work with local partners, and we definitely want to offer this to you too. That you might want to partner with us to either include some of the assets in your project when that makes sense to new use cases, or to make it simpler, for example, to crawl through social media when you have such a project. And all the assets we have our full support, and you would get full training and everything which is needed. We also, for example, indeed work with I would say, services support, meaning that either we support these assets, or if you need, we can of course support you on your projects with VEX itself. As I understand, Alexander told me there's a different, I would say, seniority or amount of projects that you work on with Watson Explorer. We often work with some partners in Europe, for example, who don't focus only on Watson Explorer, and when they have Watson Explorer projects, they want to have some services support. So they want some company that can give them 1 or 2 people and help them on the project. We do that a lot also. And that's it. So I know it's yeah. So that's it. Thank you very much for being on the call and listening to everything.
Okay.
And I have time for. Yeah. Sorry.
I saw the use case for some Swiss insurance company. Is it possible to get some details about the usage of VEX and content classification in the same?
In general, of course, we can talk very specifically, but in general, they want to classify incoming clients, and how they do it is that they use natural language processing to analyze their applications, and based on those applications, the software decides what are the most possible types of that one client coming in. So when a new client comes into the insurance company, they have to categorize them, and they have many categories, and it's too time consuming and didn't work for letting only a clerk, only a person to decide the category, because the people always used a couple of only, every single person would use only his favorite 5 categories. What the software does, it reads the application first and decides what are the 5 most probable classes for that one person. And then it only offers these 5 to that person as a top pick. And he chooses the best from these 5. And what it led to is that there is a better or more real class usage. So also not only the 5 most common or the 5 most favorite classes are used, but all classes are used evenly.
Okay.
So that's the main goal there. And they also have some other use cases like better customer overview and so on, which they also use Watson Explorer for. But this was the reason that they started the project. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I know you have your agenda packed, so let me tell one more thing. Whenever, if anything made sense for you or you want to follow up on that, I'm very happy to have an individual call or discussion or meeting or anything with either one of you. So you can take these ideas home or to work actually, discuss, and if anything makes sense for you, you can just get back to me and we can discuss this again, go through particular use cases or particular projects or particular assets whatever you need, and you can drill deeper in that.
Okay, thank you.
So
Any other question? No, that we don't have any other questions. Thanks a lot, Martin.
okay, thank you very much for having us.